My name is Gina Mitchell, and at 35, I thought I had everything figured out. I had a good job as a project manager at a software company, a comfortable apartment that I'd bought before getting married, and what I thought was a happy family, my husband Mark and our 7-year-old daughter Emma. "Gina, you're obsessing over those spreadsheets again," Mark would say, leaning against the doorframe of our home office, his dark hair slightly messy as always. "Come on, let's order takeout and watch a movie with Emma." I'd look up from my laptop where I'd been calculating our monthly savings, trying to figure out how to reach our goals faster. "Just 5 more minutes. I think if we cut back on eating out, we could put away an extra $300 this month." Mark would roll his eyes. "You know what Tom and Sarah did last weekend? They took their kids to Disney World. Spontaneous trip, just because they felt like it. Meanwhile, we're here counting pennies for some future that might never come. Tom's parents are loaded, and Sarah's family owns half the real estate in town," I'd remind him. "We need to be smart about our money. I want Emma to go to a good college someday, and wouldn't it be nice to have a house with a backyard where we could have barbecues and Emma could play?" These conversations became more frequent as time went on. Mark would tell me about Dave and Lisa's trip to Europe or John and Maria's new boat. I'd counter with the fact that Dave and Lisa were drowning in credit card debt, and John and Maria lived in a tiny rental apartment with no savings. Emma would often break up these discussions, bouncing into the room with her endless 7-year-old energy. "Mommy, can you help me with my science project? We're making a solar system." Those moments were my favorite, helping Emma with her homework, watching her mind work as she figured things out. She was so bright, so curious about everything. It only strengthened my resolve to secure her future. "Of course, sweetie," I'd say, closing my laptop. "Let's make the best solar system your class has ever seen." Looking back now, I should have noticed the changes in Mark sooner. The late nights at work that started becoming more frequent. The fishing trips with friends that seemed to multiply. The visits to his parents in the neighboring state that somehow never aligned with when I called his mom to chat. But I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? We'd been married for 8 years, built a life together, had our beautiful Emma. Trust wasn't even a question in my mind, it was as natural as breathing. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when my world fell apart. I was helping Emma with her math homework when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found Mark's parents, Linda and Robert, standing there with gift bags in their hands. "Grandma, Grandpa," Emma squealed, running to hug them. I noticed something was off immediately. Linda's eyes were red, and Robert couldn't quite meet my gaze. After Emma took her gifts to her room, Linda grabbed my hands. "Gina, sweetheart, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. "Please sit down." We moved to the kitchen, and I felt my stomach tighten. Linda took a deep breath before speaking. "Mark came to visit us last weekend," she began. "Yes, he mentioned that," I said, remembering his casual announcement about visiting his parents. "He wasn't alone, Gina." Robert's voice was hard with anger. "He brought a woman with him. He introduced her as his bride." The words hit me like a physical blow. "His, what?" "We threw them both out," Linda said, squeezing my hand. "We couldn't believe he would do this to you and Emma. We had to tell you, honey. You need to know what kind of man our son has become." I sat there, my mind spinning, barely able to form words. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. "Thank you for telling me." After they left, I moved through the house like a ghost, straightening things that didn't need straightening, checking on Emma, who was happily playing with her new toys. When Mark walked through the door that evening, I was waiting. "We need to talk," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Your parents came by today." He froze, and in that moment, I knew it was all true. The color drained from his face. "How long have you been seeing her?" My voice cracked slightly. Mark slumped into a chair. "A few months," he admitted. "Look, Gina, I'm tired. Tired of the constant saving, tired of never living in the moment. I want something different." The divorce proceedings went quickly. I kept my apartment since it was mine before the marriage, and Mark agreed to pay alimony, though it wasn't much. Thank God I'd insisted on keeping our savings account well stocked. It gave me breathing room to figure out our new normal. I threw myself into two things, Emma and work. I hired Sarah, a wonderful college student, to watch Emma after school, and I marched into my boss's office. I want the challenging projects, I told him. The ones nobody else wants to touch. I'll make them successful. He raised an eyebrow, but gave me a chance. I worked harder than I ever had before, staying late after Sarah took Emma home, coming in early, taking on the projects everyone else avoided. Within months, I had turned around 3 impossible projects. The bonuses started coming in, followed by a promotion. 5 years after the divorce, I stood in front of my new house, holding the keys in my hand. It was everything I'd dreamed of, a beautiful 2-story home with a spacious backyard where I could finally host those barbecues I'd always wanted. Emma, now 12, ran from room to room, claiming the largest bedroom upstairs as her own. During those years, I'd tried dating a few times. James from work asked me out for coffee, and there was Michael, a nice accountant I met at a conference. But nothing ever felt right. After Mark's betrayal, I found it hard to let anyone get too close. Besides, I had everything I needed, my daughter, my career, and now our dream house. Linda and Robert remained a constant in our lives, which surprised some people who thought in-laws would disappear after divorce. But they were more than in-laws to me, they were family. They spoiled Emma rotten, showing up with thoughtful gifts and taking her for weekends at their house during holidays. I never objected, their love for her was genuine, and Emma adored them. The years flew by, and before I knew it, Emma was graduating high school. She got accepted into Berkeley, her dream school, and, thanks to my careful planning and hard work, I could afford to send her there. The first few months of college, she called almost every day. "Mom, my roommate is amazing," or "Mom, you won't believe what happened in psychology class today." I lived for those calls, but gradually, they became less frequent. First weekly, then bi-weekly, then, whenever she needed something. "Mom, everyone here has the new iPhone. Mine looks ancient." "Mom, there's this amazing designer bag on sale." "Mom, my friends are all going to Cancun for spring break." I tried to be reasonable. "Honey, these are expensive things." When I was in college, I worked at the campus bookstore to earn extra money for things I wanted. The snort of derision from the other end of the phone felt like a slap. "Mom, stop with the 'when I was your age' stories. I know you make good money now." Jessica's mom bought her a car for her birthday, and they're not as well off as we are. She stopped coming home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, always having plans with friends instead. Linda and Robert would call me, worried about not seeing their granddaughter. "She's just busy," I'd tell them, trying to convince myself as much as them. But in truth, I missed my little girl desperately. The house felt too big, too quiet without her energy filling it. The only time she seemed to reach out was when she wanted something. Each time my phone rang and I saw her name, my heart would leap, only to sink when I realized it was another request for money. The years passed quickly, and Emma graduated from Berkeley with honors, landing a position at a prestigious marketing firm in San Francisco. Though we still weren't as close as we used to be, I felt proud watching her walk across that stage in her cap and gown. Then came the call that made my heart skip a beat. "Mom?" Emma's voice had that excitement I remembered from her childhood. "I'm coming home this weekend. There's someone I want you to meet." I spent the next 3 days cleaning the house from top to bottom, preparing Emma's favorite foods, and trying to calm my nerves. When the doorbell rang on Saturday evening, I practically ran to answer it. Emma stood there, more beautiful than ever in a designer dress, her hair perfectly styled. Beside her was a tall, handsome man in an expensive suit. "Mom, this is Bradley Thompson," she said, beaming. "My fiancé." "Please, call me Brad," he said, extending his hand with a warm smile. "Emma's told me so much about you, Mrs. Mitchell." We settled in the living room, and I couldn't help but notice how Emma kept positioning her left hand to catch the light. The diamond on her finger was enormous. Brad's family owns Thompson Industries, Emma announced proudly. The ring is from Cartier. It's beautiful, I said sincerely. I'm so happy for you both. Emma's smile suddenly turned calculating. Speaking of the engagement, Mom, we need to discuss the party. Of course, I nodded, reaching for my tea. We want to have it at the Ritz-Carlton, Emma continued. With about 200 guests. The total will be around $50,000. I nearly choked on my tea. 50,000? Yes, Emma said matter-of-factly. We need you to cover it. I set my cup down carefully. Honey, that's a very large amount. I don't think. Are you serious right now? Emma's voice rose sharply. After all these years of saving and saving, you can't even spend money on your only daughter's engagement? Emma, Brad touched her arm gently. Maybe we should. No, she jerked away from him. Do you know what it was like growing up with her? Always counting pennies, always talking about saving for the future. Well, this is my future, Mom. This is what you were supposedly saving for. Emma, please, I tried to keep my voice calm. I'm happy to contribute, but $50,000 for just the engagement party. You're unbelievable. She jumped to her feet, tears streaming down her face. You're just a greedy, miserable woman who cares more about her bank account than her own daughter's happiness. Emma, Brad stood up, clearly mortified. That's enough. But Emma was already storming toward the door. I can't believe I thought you'd changed. The door slammed behind her with such force that the pictures rattled on the walls. Brad apologized and followed her out. I sat there long after they left, staring at the half-empty teacups and wondering how my little girl, who once got excited over making a solar system out of styrofoam balls, had turned into someone I barely recognized. My phone rang around 9 that evening. Linda's name flashed on the screen, and something in my gut tightened. Emma was just here, Linda's voice was strained. She said you refused to help with the engagement party. She was quite upset. Did she tell you how much she asked for? I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. $50,000, Robert's voice came through, I was on speaker. And, well, we need to tell you something, Gina. We gave her $25,000. My stomach dropped. You what? We didn't know what to do, Linda's voice cracked. She was crying, saying her own mother didn't love her enough to help with her engagement. We took it from our retirement savings. I felt sick. Linda, Robert, you shouldn't have. We know, Robert sounded tired. But she's our only grandchild, and we thought it would help. After hanging up, I sat in my dark kitchen for hours. The thought of Linda and Robert dipping into their retirement savings made my chest hurt. They weren't wealthy people, they'd worked hard all their lives, just like me. 3 days later, after countless sleepless nights, I transferred $25,000 to Emma's account. Within an hour, my phone pinged with a text, engagement party next Saturday at the Ritz-Carlton, 7 p.m. Formal attire required. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the money. Just an invitation. The Ritz-Carlton was transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, white roses covered every surface, and champagne flowed endlessly. Emma was radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than my first car. Isn't it magnificent? She kept saying to anyone who would listen. Just wait until you see the wedding, it's going to be 10 times more spectacular. I stood in a corner, feeling out of place despite my carefully chosen dress. Linda and Robert found me there, both looking elegant but uncomfortable. I watched Emma holding court among her friends, all of them draped in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry. She was showing off her ring to a new group of admirers, her laugh carrying across the room. The wedding will be the event of the season, I overheard her telling her friends. We're sparing no expense. It's going to be absolutely perfect. My eyes met Robert's across the room. We shared a look of growing anxiety. We both knew what was coming. This lavish engagement party wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. I sipped my champagne slowly, watching my daughter shine in her element, surrounded by wealth and luxury. She looked happy, but there was something else in her expression, a hardness that hadn't been there when she was younger, when she would get excited about simple things like backyard barbecues and science projects. 2 weeks after the engagement party, my phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen, and I felt an inexplicable sense of dread. Mom, she didn't even bother with hello. We need to discuss the wedding budget. I need you to give me $120,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. I'm sorry, what? 120,000, she repeated slowly, as if I was a child. The dress alone is 30,000, it's being custom made by a designer in Paris. Then there's the venue, the flowers, the band. Emma, I cut her off, trying to keep my voice steady. That's absolutely out of the question. It's an astronomical amount for a wedding. God, Mom, why do you have to be so cheap? Brad's family expects a certain level of. I'm willing to give you $10,000 for the wedding expenses, I interrupted, and another $5,000 as a wedding gift. That's already very generous. There was a moment of deadly silence on the line. $120,000 is my final offer, Emma's voice turned cold. If you don't give it to me, don't bother coming to the wedding. I mean it. Something snapped inside me. Are you actually trying to blackmail me? Your own mother? Oh, here we go, she laughed bitterly. Poor single mom who sacrificed everything for her ungrateful daughter. Do you know how tired I am of that story? You've done nothing but save money all these years. What were you saving it for if not for this? I saved it for emergencies, for your education, for our future security. My voice was shaking now. I raised you alone after your father left. I never denied you anything within reason. Well, this is what I want now, she screamed. And if you don't give it to me, I'll make sure everyone knows what a greedy, horrible mother you are. How you cared more about your bank account than your only daughter's happiness. Emma, please. Don't worry though, her voice dripped with venom. I'll just ask Grandma and Grandpa. Those old fossils have one foot in the grave anyway, what do they need their savings for? Enjoy your precious money. Don't expect a wedding invitation. The line went dead. I sat there in my kitchen, the phone still in my hand, feeling like I was watching the final act of a tragedy I'd somehow helped write. All those years of careful saving, of trying to give Emma everything she needed while teaching her the value of money, where had I gone wrong? The truth hit me like a wave. In trying to make sure she never went without, I'd somehow raised a daughter who thought she deserved everything. In protecting her from hardship, I'd created something I'd never intended, a person who saw people, even her own family, as nothing more than ATMs for her desires. My phone rang early the next morning. Linda was crying before I even said hello. Gina, she came to us last night, Linda's voice shook. She wants $120,000 for the wedding. She says you refused to help her. I heard Robert in the background. It's our entire retirement savings, Gina. Everything we have. Listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice firm. Do not give her that money. Please come over tonight, there's something you need to hear. But she's our granddaughter, Linda whispered. Maybe we could take out a second mortgage. Tonight, I insisted. Please trust me on this. They arrived around 7, looking worn and troubled. I sat them down in my living room, my hands shaking slightly as I pulled out my phone. I need to show you something, I said. And it's going to be painful. But you need to hear this before you make any decisions. I pressed play on the recording from yesterday's conversation. Linda and Robert sat perfectly still as Emma's voice filled the room. Those old fossils have one foot in the grave anyway, what do they need their savings for? Linda's hand flew to her mouth. Robert's face turned ashen. There's more, I said softly, letting the recording continue, playing Emma's cold calculations and cruel dismissal of the people who had loved her unconditionally since the day she was born. By the time it finished, they were both crying. Linda's shoulders shook with silent sobs, while Robert stared straight ahead, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my own eyes filling with tears. "I knew you wouldn't believe me if I just told you. You needed to hear it yourself." All these years, Linda managed between sobs. We tried to give her everything. We would have given her our last penny. Robert's voice was hollow. But to hear her talk about us like that. I moved to sit between them on the couch, taking their hands in mine. "I know it hurts. But I couldn't let her take advantage of you like this. You deserve better." 3 days later, Linda called again. "She came back," she said, her voice stronger than before. "We told her no." "How did she take it?" "She screamed at us." Robert came on the line. "Called us senile old fools. Said we were dead to her and she'd make sure we never saw her again. She said we're not invited to the wedding anymore," Linda added, her voice catching. "Our own granddaughter." "I'm so sorry," I said, feeling the weight of their pain. "You did the right thing. She needs to learn that she can't treat people this way." After hanging up, I sat in my garden, watching the sunset. The roses I'd planted when we first moved in were blooming, their sweet scent filling the evening air. I'd always imagined Emma's wedding taking place right here, in this backyard. Instead, we were all sitting in different houses, nursing broken hearts and shattered dreams, waiting to see what would happen next. One evening, as I was about to log off social media, a message notification popped up. "Catherine Thompson, Brad's mother," it read. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. "Dear Mrs. Mitchell, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I needed to discuss something concerning Emma and Bradley's wedding plans. Emma has approached us requesting a substantial contribution, $120,000 to be exact. While we are fortunate enough to be comfortable, we find ourselves troubled by both the amount and the manner of asking. I understand she's approached you with similar demands?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before responding. Emma had played her final card, the wealthy in-laws. "Mrs. Thompson," I wrote back, "I believe you deserve complete honesty." I explained everything, the engagement party drama, the ultimatums, the attempted exploitation of her grandparents' retirement savings. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard several times, but I kept typing. This woman needed to know what she might be dealing with for years to come. Her response came quickly. "Thank you for your candor, Mrs. Mitchell. I completely understand and support your position. While we love Bradley and want him to be happy, we also believe that a wedding should be about love and family, not about extravagant displays of wealth. We will be declining Emma's request as well." A week later, I received a brief text from Linda. "Emma and Brad got married at City Hall this morning. No guests." She didn't even post anything online. I sat in my garden, thinking about my daughter in a simple courthouse ceremony. No designer dress, no expensive flowers, no hundreds of admiring guests. Part of me felt guilty. Wasn't it every mother's duty to give her daughter the wedding of her dreams? But then I remembered Emma's cruel words about her grandparents, her attempts at emotional blackmail, her willingness to bankrupt the people who loved her most just to have one elaborate day of showing off. No, this wasn't about denying her happiness, this was about something far more important. Linda and Robert call occasionally, their voices still carrying the weight of their hurt. We've grown closer through this ordeal, finding comfort in our shared pain and understanding. Sometimes we sit in my backyard, looking at the space where Emma's wedding could have been, sharing stories about the little girl who used to light up our lives with her smile. I keep hoping that one day my phone will ring, and it will be Emma, not asking for money, but ready to talk, really talk, about what happened. I hope that starting her married life without the excessive trappings she demanded might help her realize what really matters. Until then, I tend to my garden, work at my job, and keep my door unlocked, just in case. The path to reconciliation is there, waiting to be walked, but the first step has to come from her. I've learned that sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is knowing when to stand firm, even when it breaks your heart to do so. Maybe one day we'll host that backyard barbecue together again. Until then, I wait, and hope, and remember the daughter I raised, and pray that somehow, someday, she'll find her way back home.